welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a super exciting video because recently, I think in the last 2 weeks, the winner of the most recent Akutagawa Prize has been announced. And if you're not familiar with the Akutagawa Prize, it's the most exclusive literary award in Japan. And I read heavily off that list. So if you've followed my channel this year, I've already read a previous winner, Murasaki no Skato no Onna by Imamura Natsuko. This is The Woman in the Purple Skirt. It is available in English translation. I've also read Tsume Tome, which is Nails and Eyes by Fujino. What was her name? I can't read her first name. I always forget. Fujino Kaori. Fujino Kaori. So Tsume Tome by Fujino Kaori. And if you really have been following my videos, you know that technically I'm supposed to be finishing Chichitoran Breasts and Eggs by Kawakami Mieko, the original Akutagawa Prize winning Breasts and Eggs, not the English translation version of Breasts and Eggs. That is actually a translation of the story Natsu Monogatari, which is actually a redone version of the original story of Breasts and Eggs. So if you're wondering why this is so short compared to Breasts and Eggs version in English, it's because they're actually two different stories. Anyway, in any case, I've also done a dedicated video about the Akutagawa Prize that explains what it is, why it's important, and basically just to summarize the video, why is that important? Because those books are heavily translated into other languages. If a book wins an Akutagawa Prize, it's probably going to get translated. So it's very important to keep up with that prize. And then what's exciting about this year's prize, or basically the prize is actually twice a year, but what's most exciting about the most recent prize is that it was actually the first time where all the nominees were women. So today what I wanted to do is I wanted to share with you all the nominees, so give you the titles, give you the author name, and give you the summary of all the nominees for the most recent 167th Akutagawa Prize, and then tell you basically who the winner was. Let's get started because this might take me a little while to get through, especially since I had to translate all the blurbs, and some of them are not exactly super clear as to what the story is about, but I find that to be the case of blurbs in general. Like, there are books, it doesn't matter what language I read it in, I'll read the blurb and I have no idea what the book is about. So in any case, I did my best to do that, to make it easily understandable for you guys. Again, so the first book I wanted to introduce you is called おいしいごはんが食べられますように, which basically translates in a very crude manner is so we can eat good food. So the idea is we want to eat good food. And this is by Takase Junko. So this blurb is the only blurb I could find is it's a little bit lacking information. So it's basically a work plus food plus love story. You have the character Nitani, whose work is going very well. You have the character Ashikawa or Yoshikawa, depending on how you translate the name. It could have two different readings. I don't know which one is the official reading. But this character is the beloved, possibly a coworker. I think it's a coworker. It's not clear from the blurb, but I believe it's a coworker. So the beloved coworker who excels at cooking that everyone just, absolutely loves. And then you have Oshio, who's a very hardworking person. So I'm assuming the love story involves all these three people. And so the blurb just says that it's a story that combines food and human relationships that form beyond your control. So it sounds lighthearted, but what I was able to see from reviews is that it does actually have some quite complicated situations that arise, which I think is the part of the blurb that says that form beyond your control. So just like complicated relationships that arise within your workspace. So perhaps they're not allowed to create these relationships, or maybe there's a question of maybe someone is another's boss. I'm not too sure. This is all I can get from the blurb. But basically work, food, love story. That's what this book, おいしいごはんが食べれますように, so we can eat good food. That's what this book is about. The second book is called 家庭用安心坑夫, which kind of hard to translate the title without also knowing what the book is about. And it's a weird one. But basically, if I were to do a rough translation, it's called Household Wellness Minor. Yeah, I know that sounds really weird, especially since minor definitely means like a person who minds. So Household Wellness Minor, 家庭用安心坑夫, which, to translate, is our protagonist is a housewife, and she seems to be having a fairly standard marriage to her husband's, but there's a little bit of this sort of like obscure, super really vague like uneasiness behind their marriage. And then one day our protagonist, who's called Konami, one day Konami is in the area called Nihonbashi, and she goes to the department store Mitsukoshi. So in the Nihonbashi Mitsukoshi department store, on a pole, or like a you know, like the building supports that help have a create so the building doesn't fall down, you know, the support beam, stuff like that. In any case, so she goes to the Mitsukoshi department store in Nihonbashi, and on that pole she sees a sticker that was, or should be, and should still be, but was on that was stuck on a part of her house when she was young. So this sticker that should be in her childhood home, all of a sudden she finds it on the pole at a department store here in Tokyo. And so the story kind of starts from there, basically. The story starts from when she finds this sticker. And the background as to this whole like minor system is this whole concept of a minor and the household wellness minor is the fact that when she was growing up, she went to this theme park that is based around this abandoned mine. And her mother pointed to a mannequin who was dressed up as a miner, and her mother told her, the daughter, Konami, her mother told Konami that is your father, basically. So a really weird story, and it seems to be a story based on like the resulting sort of like delusion, everyday paranoia, like just kind of losing your mind, that somehow combines her sort of her stable relationship, but has a hint of unwellness and a like instability, and somehow linking that to her past, where her mother raised her to believe that this mannequin dressed up as a miner is her father. So really crazy plot point, and yeah, somehow that's gonna describe what the title of the book is. So super crazy. So that's 家庭用安心坑夫 Household Wellness Minor by Akutagawa Prize. The next book that was a nominee is called Gifted, which translates simply to Gifted. This book is by Suzuki Suzumi, and what it's about. So the narrator, who I get the idea doesn't have a name, but the narrator is writing from first person. So when you say I in Japanese, for the most part you say watashi. Watashi wa da 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 da. So I da 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 da. So our narrator, watashi, lives in a building on the corner of a pleasure quarter, and she takes into the care her sick mother. And then basically, while her mother raised watashi, the narrator, as a single mother, and her mother had published a few poetry collections while she was raising her daughter, our narrator, but they didn't really go to much success. So then, as I translated the blurb, under the smell of impending death, our narrator begins to think of the female friend she cut out of her life. So that's basically the plot. What will the meaning be of the female friends that she got of her life, and how does that connect to her mother, who was unsuccessful in publishing poetry. I think that'll be really, I think there's a lot of room for an interesting story, especially as it relates to this concept of being a single mother in Japan. So the next nominee for this session of the Akutagawa Prize is called NA, so not available, and it's by Toshimori Akira. This is the book that was the most where the blurb was the most unrevealing about what the plot of the book is. So I translated the blurb, and I'm just going to read that. Matsui Madoka is a second-year high school student. She's been dating Umi for 3 months. Her weight hasn't gone above 40 kilos for a while. She hasn't yet found that irreplaceable person. And it ends there. So it's not really clear on what the book is from just the blurb. And then what I read from reviewers who have already read the book, a lot of reviews were saying stuff like, oh, like, that's what that feeling was. Like, that's what I felt at that time. And then, like, other reviewers were really, like, saying how much they related to what the protagonist was going through. So it definitely seems like a book where it's just, like, about showing the emotions of what a high school student goes through, who's a little bit maybe having issues with her weight, so maybe a weight complex kind of story. So that's as much as I can give you on details with that book, because it's not more clear than that. And then the final book is called Akute, which I have no idea how to translate. I would have to read the book itself to be able to know how that would translate. I'm sorry, I really don't know what that should be. But the book is by山下紘加. And basically, the very first sentence of the blurb says, "My real life starts now." Okay? So the blurb says, "My real life starts now," and then it gives you a summary of the book, where basically we have our young protagonist. She wants to be an author, but she lives with her mother and her really horrible 90-year-old grandmother. And basically the sentence was really hard to translate, but as far as I could translate it, I wrote, "A heavy story about the daily life of a 19-year-old cheered on by the abusive language inspired by situations beyond our control." I hope that makes sense. It was a really hard sentence to translate, but basically just this 19-year-old who has all these aspirations, who probably is in a living situation she does not want to be in, but she's in it because she can't really do anything else, and then she takes the anger and the stress from that situation, turns it into a very abusive language, and probably directs that to her grandmother and her mother, and basically. So an incredibly heavy story. The reviewers were like, oof, wow. So that's that. So those are the 5 nominees for the Akutagawa Prize. For me, just from the blurbs, the ones I'm interested in would be the household wellness minor. That sounds crazy, and that sounds right up my alley in terms of like the type of books that like sort of combine like psychological mania but with like a real life situation, and like how, you know, a marriage can seem quite stable but there's a little something in the background that's kind of, you know, eating at the edges. That's the book I would want to read out of this list. And then I would say, I think The Single Mother, The Gifted, definitely, because I really like that topic when it comes to Japanese fiction. So Gifted, about a single mother, I think could be really interesting. And then I would say the last book, the Akute by the 19-year-old, I think the idea of, you know, usually a lot of Japanese fiction, you have like very endearing older older characters. So like a very loving 90-year-old grandmother. But the fact that our 90-year-old grandmother is actually a horrible person sounds really interesting. And although I'm sure it's a very heavy and a very dark story, that one sounds like it could be really, really good. But who is the winner? Who won the Akutagawa Prize this session? It is the very first book that I told you about. So おいしいごはんを食べられますように. So We Can Eat Good Food by Takase Junko, which was the story that combines work, relationships, and food, and then a love story amongst all the characters. So yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the books, Akutagawa Prize winners, like all of these books, there tends to be a very dark dark angle to them, a lot of societal issues, women's issues, issues with like young protagonists. Like that's a very common like theme through a lot of Akutagawa Prize winners. Like there's definitely a very strong social aspect to these books. And this one seems quite light. Now, again, it's definitely going to focus on workplace relationships. And I think that's definitely going to create the drama and the tension in the work. But just having like, you know, the aspect of food, which definitely has a very sort of heartwarming, like, you know, stomach warming feel to it, is surprising for me because it definitely gives you an idea, not an idea, but it gives you a notion, I think, or gives me at least the notion that it's going to be a very much lighthearted book compared to some of these other nominees. So, very interested to see which books I do end up reading in the future. I do actually have, it's in the other room, but if you've been following my channel and you know that I've been doing a 1 book per month in Japanese reading. Like I'm in a book club where we read 1 Japanese language book per month. For the month of August, you can expect me to read a former nominee or a nominee for one of the previous Akutagawa Prize sessions, basically. So that'll be interesting. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm excited. This is always excites me. So yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!